What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Nash, and today we have the very first episode of what I like to call Microsoft Excel for Analysts. I've had a lot of people ask me, where can they learn how to use Microsoft Excel? What is the best way to learn how to use Microsoft Excel? So I decided to do my own thing where I can interact with you guys if you have any questions. And I want this to be a live stream, right? This is obviously not live stream. This is pre-recorded, but in the future we're gonna have some live streams where we can have real-time interaction. You can ask, hey, what did you just use right now? Or what did you just do? Can you do this? Can you show me how to do this? So that's what I want this to be. But this is the first episode, and what I'm gonna be covering today is gonna be how to rearrange data, right? That's one of the most basic things you're gonna have to do as an analyst, right? Rearranging data so that it makes sense to you, it makes sense to other people, and you can continue from there. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. And also, if you have any questions, if you have, make sure to leave those in the comment section below. And also, I'm not going to be using a lot of keyboard shortcuts because I think, you're not going to be able to tell exactly what I'm doing. So if I just use those the whole time, it won't even make sense, right? So I'm going to try to use my mouse as much as I can. And if I use a shortcut, I'm going to be explaining that to you what I just did, so it's not confusing or it's not like, what did he just do, right? So let's go ahead and get started here. So let me go ahead and make this screen a little smaller. All right, so there you go. So I am on the US BLS website, and this is public data, so you can download data from here. We're gonna be using one of the data sets from here. This is employment projections data. So essentially what this is doing is projecting employment between I think 2020 and the year 2030. So it looks at, if you look at the visual here, it says that you have the occupation title, then you have like the codes, and you can see that the employment in 2020 to 2030, and you can see the change, you can see the percentage change if you want to look at that. And there's a bunch of data in here that we're going to be downloading here. All right, so most of the time when you are working as an analyst, you don't always get to see the data this way, right? You don't have a visual form of the data, like I'm looking at right now, right? You usually get a file, Excel file, CSV file. So we're just gonna pretend like we didn't see any of this. So I'm gonna download this. We're gonna download this CSV. Also, most of the time you get data, you download data from a database, someone sends you a data set or something like that. It's most likely gonna be in CSV format, right? And one of the things you want to do is you want to convert the data to convert the file to a Microsoft Excel file. So to do this, once you open the CSV, it's gonna look something like this, right? You're gonna have the option that says save as up here. So go ahead and hit that. All right, so when you save your data, go ahead and change the name, and you're gonna change the save as type as Excel workbook, right? Kind of like that. There you go. All right, so that is the first thing that you always want to do, right? So let's say this is the first time we're seeing this data. We just know that these are employment projections. And, the first thing I like to do is really understand what is in each column, right? So each column, you want to be able to understand exactly what's in it before you try to rearrange anything. So if I double click on this, it tells you, this is a pretty big list here, actually. I think it has like the different names that each title has, right? So you have, what is this right here? You have tellers, bank tellers, commercial tellers. It's a bunch of like, alternative names for the same title. All right, so the first we have the job name, and then we also have the occupation code. I guess that's the code that's associated with, all the different titles that are related to the job, right? You also have employment in 2020, and you also have employment in 2030, right? So it's telling you if there's going to be an increase or a decrease, right? This is a projection. You also have employment change between 2020 and 2030. So it's doing the math for you. What's the difference between those 2 years? You also have employment change. This is a percentage version of the change of employment. You also have occupational openings, so new jobs that are going to be open. Let's see here. You also have the median annual wage. You also have, what else do we have here? Typical entry level education. And you also have, what is it, education code, you have work experience, you also have work, I don't know what this is. You also have, what is this over here, on the job training. So what, say, typical on the job training. So if the job has on the job training, you also have some code at the end over here. So this is the first thing you always want to do when you open a data set, and you also want to know how big the data set is, right? So I want to go to the bottom of this data set. I can scroll down all the way to the bottom, which is the easy way to do this. It's about 791 lines, or you can use the keyboard shortcut. So I'm gonna select this cell over here. I'm gonna hold Control and I'm gonna click the down arrow. So this is gonna take me to the last line right here, right? So that's the last line. So to go up, you can hold Control, hit the up arrow. It's gonna take you all the way up. So let's say, I have this data, right? I understand what each column has, and now it's up to you to decide how you want to rearrange this data. So what I'm gonna do is I want to arrange this data by looking at the occupation title, and I want to look at the employment in let's say 2030. I don't even want to look at 2020. I want to look at the employment in 2030. And I also want to look at let's see here. I also want to look at the median annual wage. Let's see here. Let's see occupational openings. And I also want to look at median occupational wage in 2020. That's what we have. I want to look at the entry level education. Let's say I'm a college student who's trying to decide what major I want to major in. So I have this data set, from the BLS, which is a credible source, a very credible source. And I'm trying to figure out what should I major in that's going to give me a job in 2030. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start off with creating a pivot table, right? So this is going to allow me to rearrange this data. So I'm going to go to, let's go to Insert, and then I go to Pivot Table, right? Click on the table. All right, so the first option you have here, or the first option is going to be to pick the table or range. So for this, you need to select all the data on this page, right? So sometimes it's going to be selected for you, right? Like right now it is selected, but if it's not selected, you can just click the first cell, which is A1, and drag here all the way here to down to the right, and go all the way down to the last line, right? So let's go ahead and select this. So now we have the whole table selected. So that is one way to do it. All right, so if you are someone that likes using shortcuts, there is a shortcut to select all this. So you can hold Control, then Shift, and then I'm gonna click on the right arrow to select all the columns going to the right. Right, there you go. Now I'm gonna, while still holding Control and Shift, I'm gonna go ahead and click the down arrow to select all the rows. Everything is selected. So it's the same thing as manually selecting everything. Now what I'm gonna do here is, now that I have the table / range selected, I'm gonna go ahead and add this pivot table on a new worksheet. So a worksheet is gonna open another page here. So I like doing that because it separates your data, and it makes it look clean. It's not too messy. It's not too confusing. If you want to do it on an existing worksheet, you can, select this and you select the location here. But I always recommend creating a new worksheet. Now, this is what our pivot table looks like, okay? Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and look at those things that I was looking for. There's a couple of things we can do here, right? So what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to start off with, let's see here. I want to start off with, let's see here. The occupational title, I don't want it to be displayed here because, as you saw, guys, if we go back to this data, you can see that this has all possible titles that a job can have, right? So I don't want that in a table where it's gonna take a lot of space. It doesn't make my data look attractive, or my table. So I'm gonna go back here to the pivot table. Let me actually rename this to, you can double click on this. I'm gonna rename it to pivot. I always recommend renaming your worksheets because, sometimes when you have like 20 of them, you want to be able to easily identify them. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the title and I'm gonna put it as a filter. So if it's a filter, it's gonna allow me to click a drop down and select whatever I want to select over here. So you see, as we move on here. All right, so Now I want to look at let's say the first thing I want to grab is going to be the employment in 2030. Actually, let's grab 2030 and 2020, right? And I'm going to put this in rows, right? So right here, so we have employment in 20. Actually, let's put this in columns, right? Put it in columns. We have it over here, right? Actually, now let's put it in let's put that in rows. All right. So and we're also gonna have employment in 2030. Let's add that as a row. And we also, so right now we're just selecting, you know, our the data that we need, right? You don't need to worry about how this looks because we're gonna design the table later so it looks a lot nicer. Now I'm gonna go ahead and go to let's say let's select let's look at so you see the openings in 2020 and then in 2030 you're going to be able to see to identify the difference. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and grab let's say the difference. Let's go ahead and grab a lot of data here. You can always change it later. Let's see here, you can also let's just do a percentage change, put that on there as well. And let's say we also want to see the openings as well. So occupation openings, let's drop that in there as well. And we're also gonna grab, let's see here, we're also gonna grab the annual wage in 2020 because you want to know how much you're gonna get paid, right? We'll go ahead and grab the annual wage and entry level for jobs. Let's see here, let's say you also want to know work experience as well. I like that. And you also, let's see on the job training as well. You want to see that as well, okay? All right, so the reason I like putting everything in rows is it makes sense to me that way. I want to show you exactly why it makes sense, right? Now we're gonna go ahead and design this pivot table. So if we go to design and let's go ahead and there's no subtotals here. If you had subtotals, you would go to do not show subtotals. If you just had a lot of numbers in here, there isn't really a lot of numbers in here. So I'm gonna go to let's go to report layout. I'm gonna go to show in tabular form. So this is gonna stretch it out horizontally. You see here. There we go. So it's stretched out horizontally. All right. So sometimes when you have two values that are the same following each other, they're not gonna be repeated, right? You see that there's a 0.2 here and then there's nothing over here. So you want to go to report layout and you want to go to repeat all item labels here, right? So there you go. So now we don't have any gaps for numbers that are the same, right? All right. So once we do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let's go here. You can double click on here like that to kind of like make sure that everything, you can see everything on here. All right, so as you can see here, all the titles are going to be in row 3, right? So there's multiple ways to do this, right? So if I was going to go back to, if you want to go back to the pivot table, you can right click on this and go to like any of this over here, any of the headers, and go to show field list. Okay, so this is how I would arrange my data, right? For me, I like to see it from left to right, right? This is all connected. Now, how you use this right here, let's say we wanted to look at one specific job. I'm going to click this drop down. And sometimes you're not going to be able to select this if it's the first time you're doing this. You want to go ahead and hit select multiple items. Now everything is going to be selected. Let's say I want to look at accountants only. So accountants, hit OK. Now I only have the accountants line, right? So it's going to show me all these numbers here and they have to make sense to you. So I want to cover this in the next video, which is going to be part 2. So stay tuned for that. You know, I don't want to give you too much information in just one big long video. I know some of you are probably taking notes, but the filter is going to allow us to what is it, to actually do multiple things here, to select multiple things. So let's say I want to look at let's look at something interesting here. Chief executives, right? It's like CEO, the C level positions. So you can see that the data here. So in the next video, I want to show you how to format this data so it makes sense. These are our percentages, obviously, but they're not showing as percentages. So in the next video, we're going to be looking at that, and we're going to be looking at other ways that you can arrange this data. So for this example specifically, what I did was I just put everything as rows, but this you can obviously let's go to show field list. You can obviously you know, change things here, move things to what is it, to values. If you want to do that, you can, you know, do a bunch of things with pivot tables, but this is the most basic pivot table that makes sense to me. If I'm working with data, I want to see everything in rows, right? And it's going to be in order. That way I can read the data from left to right. This is how I like doing it. But in the next video, I'm going to be showing you a couple of different ways that you can, arrange your table and how we can format this to actually make sense. All right, so thank you so much for watching, guys. This was pretty much it for this episode. We're going to continue on episode 2, which might be dropping maybe next week. And we're going to be learning a bunch of other things on what you can do with pivot tables, things like that. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the second episode to this. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.